The London Blitz had been happening for a while, but was getting worse towards the build-up to D-Day, because the Germans knew the Allies were planning something. The children of London were moved to the countryside while the adults were still in London. During the bombings, the people of London were taken into bomb shelters that were usually located in subways. The planning team responsible for the invasion of Normandy had considered the weather, the moon, and tides when assigning a date for D-Day. Air operations required clear skies and a full moon for good visibility. Naval operations required low winds, calm seas to safely transport troops ashore. Ground troops needed to land at a low tide when German beach obstacles were exposed and easier to deal with. D-Day required the best combination of these factors. The Allied powers started planning the invasion in 1942 or 1943. It was hard to know for sure because everything is classified. The invasion was called Operation Overlord. What we do know about D-Day was that it was a plan to liberate France. First Normandy, then Paris. France was invaded by Nazi Germany on June 25, 1940. A resistance was created after the invasion of Nazi Germany. This resistance would help the Allied forces retake Paris. This resistance was called the French Resistance. They had to put aside their political differences and fight against Nazi Germans. The Allied powers worked with the resistance for the scheduling of D-Day. The resistance sabotaged trains. President Eisenhower of the U.S. planned to land the U.S. forces on Omaha Beach and Utah Beach. Omaha was the bloodiest. We have studied this one particularly because it was the hardest beach to take. Historical films like Saving Private Ryan are accurate because they show how hard it was to take the beach. To get a foothold in Europe, they needed to find a way to get a large amount of men on the other side of the English Channel. Moving around 1,600 troops was quite a challenge and required a lot of preparation and planning.
Goes for the trip back. All along the beaches they wait. As the fighting develops, every means is used to hasten the removal of the wounded from the scene of battle. The jeep of all trades is pressed.
Rommel was a Nazi German commander that often commanded tanks into battle. He had the nickname the Desert Fox. He adopted this nickname because he fought in Africa and commanded his own tank and several others. When he was assigned to D-Day, he had the job of predicting where the Allies would land. Luckily, he was wrong and we were able to take the beach with resistance, but not as much as there should have been if Rommel guessed right.
Military planners relied on information from meteorologists and other specialists who advised that D-Day should fall somewhere between the 5th and 7th of June, 1944. D-Day was set for the 5th of June, but Supreme Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower knew that the weather could be critical in determining whether the invasion went off as planned. Postponement would have meant a 2-week delay, and on the 19th of June, a severe storm hit the channel. The storm destroyed one of the two Mulberry harbors, damaged the other, and temporarily disrupted the crucial buildup of Allied men and equipment. Strong winds and rough seas caused problems for the landing craft and brought the tide in more quickly than anticipated. Paratroopers were dropped out of planes behind enemy lines in order to get a head start on the operation. The U.S. landed on the beach in LCVP landcrafts. LCVPs were launched from a bigger ship. The soldiers were given a speech by their commanding officer, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, and then were loaded onto the LCVPs.
Weather was bad every other time they had planned to take the beach. The day they took it, the weather was bad but tolerable. Of course, this surprise attack could not have been accomplished without the Ghost Army. The Ghost Army set up inflatable tanks on other beaches to confuse the Germans. This was the beginning of Operation Overlord. Operation Overlord was what the entire invasion of France was called.
D-Day. The great plan is put to the test.
There were a lot of different types of soldiers that were involved in D-Day. Infantry soldiers were the main soldiers that were on the fields. They would carry different types of guns, explosives, and some even carried flamethrowers. Even though tanks were dropped on the beach after the main battle of D-Day, they had a very important role in other battles after D-Day. The tank crew was made up of a driver, a co-driver, a gunner, and the ammunition loader. Boat drivers drove the soldiers to the beach. It was very dangerous to be a boat driver because it is hard to get out of the boat, so this would expose you to machine gun fire. Bombers softened up the Nazis before D-Day. Bombers would drop bombs on the enemy during the build-up to an attack or during an attack, though only in extreme cases. Each soldier had a specific job to do during D-Day. Soldiers raided bunkers and captured enemy soldiers. It's D-Day. Here's the world famous GI charging through the surf at Omaha Beach.
Explosions all around them, sand flying up in their face, people dying all around them and ringing in their ears. All they have is their gun and 300 yards of death, bullets, and bunkers they've had with them. The short-term impact of D-Day was that the Allied powers now had a foothold on France. This led to the liberation of Paris and eventually France. Now the French resistance had hope.
The long-term impact of D-Day is that we would not have won World War II. Germany could have controlled the rest of the world. The world could have been filled with darkness, terror, and destruction.
In conclusion, D-Day turned the tide of the war, and without it the Allied powers would not have won the war. An organization called NATO was created after the war. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Countries like Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Norway, Netherlands, Portugal, the UK, US, Greece, Turkey, West Germany, and Spain. Not all good things came from the war. In fact, it started another one, a cold one. After World War II ended, the Allied powers began falling apart. Russia wanted to spread communism, and the rest of the Allies did not want that. This started the Cold War. Some of the tactics used by Eisenhower are still used today.